I remember the exact moment I decided to lie. It was the evening my son looked at me, not as a father, but as a man asking for permission to trust someone with his future. His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. That's when I knew whatever I did next would shape his life in ways he wouldn't understand until much later. So I smiled, and I told him I had nothing left to offer. That was the first lie. My name isn't important. What matters is what I built, and what I was about to risk losing. For 35 years, I ran a small manufacturing business. Quiet, steady growth. No headlines, no flashy success, but enough to secure a life most people would envy. I wasn't rich in the way people show off, but I had more than enough to protect my family, to support my son, and to ensure he never had to struggle the way I did. But my son, Ayan, he never cared about money. That was one of the things I admired most about him. He grew up watching me work late nights. Come home tired, hands rough. Clothes smelling like metal and oil. I never hid the truth from him, but I also never burdened him with it. I wanted him to grow up free, not shaped by wealth, but by values. And he did. Kind, patient, honest to a fault. So when he came to me one evening and said, "I want you to meet someone," I didn't hesitate. Her name was Meher. The way he said her name, it told me everything. We met for the first time at a small cafe. Nothing fancy, Ayan insisted on that. He said she preferred simple places, and I wanted to respect that. When she walked in, I noticed something immediately. She didn't scan the room looking for status. She looked for him. That mattered to me. She greeted me with a soft smile, respectful but not overly rehearsed. Her voice was calm, her posture relaxed. There was no arrogance, no forced charm, just presence. But I've lived long enough to know that first impressions can be dangerously convincing. So I watched, I listened, and I remembered. Because years ago I made a mistake, trusting someone too easily. It cost me more than money. It cost me peace. I promised myself I would never let that happen again. Not to me, and certainly not to my son. Over the next few weeks, I got to know Meher better. She spoke about her family often, her parents, her younger brother, their close-knit bond. She described modest beginnings, shared struggles, and a strong sense of unity. On the surface, everything sounded genuine. But sometimes, it's not what people say, it's how they say it. There were moments, small, almost invisible, where something felt off. Like when she mentioned financial hardships, but casually referenced brands and experiences that didn't quite align. Or when she spoke about simplicity, yet seemed unusually curious about Ayan's long-term plans, his career, his ambitions, his stability. Subtle questions, too subtle for Ayan to notice, but not for me. One night after dinner, I asked Ayan a simple question. "Do they know about me?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "My business, my finances." He hesitated for a second too long. "I told her a little," he admitted. "Not everything." That was enough, because a little can be enough for the wrong kind of interest to grow. That's when the idea came to me. Not out of suspicion alone, but out of responsibility. If Meher truly loved my son for who he was, then nothing I did would change that. But if there was something else beneath the surface, I needed to know. A week later, I sat down with Ayan and told him the second lie. "I've decided to step away from the business," I said quietly. "Things haven't been going well. I might have to sell what's left." He stared at me, shocked. "Why didn't you tell me?" I sighed, lowering my eyes just enough to make it believable. "I didn't want to worry you. The truth was my business was stronger than ever. But from that moment on, I became a different man. I changed everything. I stopped wearing my usual clothes, replaced them with older, worn-out ones I hadn't touched in years. I downgraded my car. I avoided conversations about money. When Meher visited, I kept things simple, almost uncomfortably so. No displays, no hints, no safety net. Just a father, with nothing left. And then I waited. At first, nothing changed. Meher still visited, still smiled, still treated me with the same polite respect. If anything, she seemed more attentive, asking if I needed help, offering to cook, insisting that I shouldn't stress about the future. Ayan was relieved. "You see?" he said one night. "She's not like that." I nodded. But inside, I wasn't convinced, because real intentions don't reveal themselves immediately. They surface, under pressure. The first crack appeared during a family dinner at her parents' house. They invited us over, said it was time for both families to connect properly. I agreed, because this was where truth often hides. Their home was modest but well kept. Too well kept, considering everything I had heard. It wasn't wealth, but it wasn't struggle either. Her father greeted me warmly, but his eyes, they lingered. Not on me, on my watch, my shoes, the car I arrived in. Except now, there was nothing impressive to see, and I noticed the moment his expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. Dinner started pleasantly. Conversations flowed. Laughter came easily, but then slowly. The questions began. "So," her father said casually, "what do you do these days?" I smiled faintly. "Not much anymore. I used to run a small business." But it didn't work out. There was a pause. A quiet, almost invisible pause. "Oh," he replied. "That's unfortunate." His tone was polite, but his interest disappeared. After that, everything felt different. The warmth cooled. The smiles became thinner. Even Meher. She was still kind, still attentive, but something in her eyes had changed. Like she was thinking, calculating, reevaluating. On the drive home, Ayan didn't notice anything. He talked about how well the evening went, how his parents liked me, how everything felt right. I just listened, because I wasn't ready to tell him what I saw. Not yet. Days passed, then weeks, and the changes became harder to ignore. Phone calls became shorter, visits less frequent, plans postponed, each excuse small, each one reasonable. But together, they formed a pattern. One evening, I walked into the living room and found Ayan sitting in silence, his phone in his hand. His face, I hadn't seen it like that before. "What happened?" I asked. He looked up at me, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing," he said. "She's just busy." I nodded slowly. But I knew, because I had seen this before, years ago, when trust starts to bend before it breaks. That night I made a decision. I would stop waiting. I would find the truth, not through assumptions, not through suspicion, but through one final step, a step that would reveal everything. The next morning I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. As the line rang, my heart felt heavier than it had in decades. Because I knew, once I crossed this line, there would be no turning back. And whatever I discovered would change my son's life forever. The call connected. A familiar voice answered. And before I could speak, I heard something in the background. A voice. Soft. Familiar. It was Meher. And in that moment, I realized I might have been too late. The moment I heard her voice on that call, something inside me went completely still. Not shock, not anger, just clarity. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch, listening carefully. The man on the other end, someone I trusted long before Ayan was even born, cleared his throat. "Are you there?" he asked. "I am," I replied quietly. In the background, Meher's voice faded, like she had stepped into another room. But it was too late. I had already recognized the tone, the softness she reserved for people she wanted something from. "Who else is with you?" I asked. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. "My niece," he said finally. Niece. The word settled heavily in my chest, because I knew he didn't have a niece. His name was Rahim. Years ago, when my business was still finding its footing, he had helped me navigate partnerships, contracts, people. He had a talent for reading intentions, for spotting cracks before they became fractures. We hadn't spoken in years, not because of conflict, but because life simply moved on. But I never forgot one thing about him. He never lied well. "I need to see you," I said. Another pause. Then quieter this time. "All right." We met that same evening. Not in an office, not in a public place. At a small, quiet park where conversations didn't echo and eyes didn't linger. Rahim looked older. Not just in age, but in the way he held himself. Like a man carrying something he hadn't yet decided to put down. For a moment, we didn't speak. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "How long?" He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together. "A few months." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "And what exactly is she doing with you?" He looked at me, not defensive, not ashamed, just tired. She came to me through someone, he said. Said she needed advice. Financial guidance. About investments. About stability. Did she mention my son? Yes. Did she mention me? Another pause. Yes. The truth didn't explode. It unfolded, piece by piece. Controlled, measured. More painful that way. She knew who you were, Rahim continued. At least, who you used to be. She asked questions, careful ones. About your business history, your assets, your structure. My chest felt tight, but I didn't interrupt. At first, I thought she was just being cautious, he said. Trying to understand the family she might marry into. And now? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said it. Now I think she's trying to understand what she might lose. The words echoed in my mind long after he stopped speaking. What she might lose. Not what she might gain. Not who she might love. But what she might lose. Does my son know? Rahim asked quietly. I shook my head. Not yet. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, replaying every moment. Every conversation. Every subtle shift I had noticed over the past few weeks. The pieces fit together now. Too well. But there was still one thing I needed. Not assumptions. Not secondhand truths. I needed to hear it. From her. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, Meher came to the house. Unannounced. Ayan wasn't home. It was just the two of us. She stood at the door, holding a small box of sweets. Her expression carefully composed. Uncle, I was nearby. I thought I'd check on you. I stepped aside, letting her in. Of course, I said. We sat in the living room. The same room where she had once laughed freely, where her eyes used to shine with warmth. Now, there was something else. Caution. Distance. You've been busy, I said calmly. She smiled faintly. Just family things. I nodded. Then I leaned forward slightly. Or your financial planning? Her smile froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. I don't understand, she said. Her voice was steady. But her hands. They tightened around each other. I spoke to Rahim, I said. No anger. No accusation. Just truth. This time the silence wasn't subtle. It was heavy. Unavoidable. For a moment I thought she would deny it. Dodge it. But instead, she exhaled. And something in her posture shifted. Not guilt. Not fear. Something else. Honesty. I was trying to be careful, she said quietly. Careful of what? Of my future. Her words didn't come out harsh. They came out practical, like she had rehearsed them in her own mind 100 times. I've seen what happens when people trust blindly, she continued. When they marry into something they don't understand. Promises change, situations change. And love? I asked. She looked at me then, directly. Love doesn't pay for uncertainty, she said. The sentence lingered between us. Cold, precise, unapologetic. And my son? I asked softly. Her eyes flickered. Just slightly. I care about him, she said. He's kind. He's good. But she didn't say she loved him. Not this time. Then why stay? I asked. That's when her expression changed again. Not defensive. Not ashamed. Just honest. Because I didn't know what was real, she said. About you? About everything. There it was. The truth. Simple. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. If things were different, she added quietly, I wouldn't have to ask these questions. I leaned back, studying her. For the first time since I met her, I wasn't trying to read between the lines. There were no lines left. You could have asked us, I said. She shook her head. People don't always tell the truth when it matters. For a moment, I almost respected that. Almost. The front door opened. Ayan's voice echoed through the hallway. I'm home! Meher turned toward the sound. And for the first time since this conversation began, I saw something real in her eyes. Not calculation, not control, but fear, because now there were no more filters. No more private conversations, no more carefully chosen words. This was the moment everything would collide. Truth, trust, and the illusion we had all been living in. Ayan walked into the room, smiling at first. Then slowing as he sensed the tension, he looked at me. Then at her. What's going on? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. I looked at Meher. She looked at me. And in that silent exchange, a choice was made. Not by me, not by him, but by her. She took a step forward, her voice steady, her eyes locked on his. And just before she spoke, I realized something I hadn't expected. This wasn't just about revealing the truth. It was about what that truth would cost. Because in the next few seconds, my son wouldn't just learn who she was. He would learn who I had pretended to be. And some truths don't just break relationships, they change them forever.